But we must be realistic. The Catholic faith is not coming back in Europe. Not yet, not in normal historical time. We even have our Holy Father, who seems to have gone off the deep end in many ways. Just the way it is, you know? We're in those kinds of times. Unless we get another St. Pius X, things aren't going to be arrested. But even if we did get a St. Pius X, it's too late.
You think so?
All over the world, men are in positions of authority in the Catholic Church who are what you might call idol shepherds. They are false shepherds. In Rome, in the days of St. Pius X, the bishops everywhere could be trusted pretty much. Today, you'd be one man in Rome against the entire German hierarchy, the entire Dutch and Belgian hierarchy, the lukewarm English hierarchy, much of the rest of the world. However, am I pessimistic? Not at all, because remember, the Catholic Church became the strongest religion on earth. The only reason there are more Muslims in the world now than Catholics is because this civilization, founded by the Catholic Church, produced science and technology which was given to the Muslim societies so their children didn't die like droves after being born. Gave them the science of agriculture, gave them everything they have. In 1950, there were hardly any Muslims in the world. It's our culture, our civilization, our science that's built them up. So we don't have to worry about that. What we have to note is this, that we are perhaps entering a definitive time, because given that Christ built this civilization, the best in the world, with the Catholic Church, if it is collapsing, and our civilization as well as collapsing, in so many ways, as well as our church in the West collapsing, then we must be approaching the end times. We must be approaching them, because there's no precedent for what's going on now. There has to be the renewal, which will be from a supernatural source.
So you don't believe in a revival?
In a supernatural way. Not in the way of, for example, a pope will be elected, who's a great reformer, and he'll turn everything around. No, things are going down the toilet so far that those who could do that in the past. But today, we will have God himself who will intervene. And that's what the holy saints say.
Well, let me ask you something.
I have a question.
What I mean by revival is, for example, you have a promiscuous woman who has low morals, and she becomes a mother.
Yeah.
And she realized how much it affected her in a negative way.
Yes.
To be a moral person.
Yes.
So she said, no, I'm not going to have my child going through the same thing.
Yes.
Therefore, revival, not necessarily some supernatural way, but revival of morality because of the fall of the society.
Yes.
So there is, in my view, very often you get very moral people that actually come from homes which are morally fallen.
I think I need to clarify then, don't I?
Yeah.
On an individual level, people of all religions, including lapsed Catholics, come to the Catholic faith. That is a revival on the individual level. And I believe, we are, in Britain, we're talking about, given that Ukrainians, our puppet regime, Storm Shadow missiles to fire deep into Russia.
Yeah.
And tell you something which isn't generally known about Britain and our place in NATO. The United States presidents can authorise the launch of nuclear weapons anywhere against anyone in the world, except that from the United States. But he cannot authorise the launch of nuclear weapons from anywhere outside the United States in our continent, in Europe. He requires the permission of the British Prime Minister to launch any nuclear weapons from anywhere in Europe. Only the British Prime Minister.
In Europe?
Yes. So we can launch, with the permission of the British Prime Minister, nuclear weapons could be launched from Naples Air Base into Russia. But you could not get a launch without the permission of the British Prime Minister.
That's not the Italians.
Not the Italians. That's important. The reason I'm saying this. No, unfortunately. Now, the reason I'm saying this is because we have got to be target number one of all the European governments for this reason. And we are toying with giving the Ukrainian puppet regime weapons with which they can cause great harm to the Russians.
In fact, the Russians often do point to Britain as the main villain.
Yes, and we are, because we are constantly egging on the Americans. Now, you know, I'll put it down. I am so pro-Putin on this, but it doesn't matter. It doesn't matter.
Only on this, I hope.
On a few other things, but don't worry about that. What matters is that we are in the crosshairs, and I think we will end up in some kind of conflict. I don't think it will be a full-blown nuclear conflict with the Russians, because God wants Europe to survive.
Isn't it interesting we're talking about real stuff, and then he has to bring God.
However, what will happen is we are going down as a civilization. Because when all this structure is collapsing, they'll refer to being real women. And the women of England will be like the women we could admire in the 1930s or the 1950s. They'll be real women again. And you know, the women of England, they don't need to wear a hijab to be decent. And the men of England don't need to have their women dressed in from top to bottom in black to not be lustful. This country was sane and decent and the best country in the world when it came to morality across the board. When women dressed in a free way, in a normal way, but not in the way that they're encouraged to dress now. And the men were decent men too. Now, of course, nothing's perfect. But we don't need Islam to teach us morality. We could have our doors left open and nobody would steal from them. That was our community. Good to see you.
I either think you're
That's a bit subjective, isn't it?
Christianity and the Catholic Church
Do I
have been promising a spiritual renewal, to my knowledge, for the last 50 odd years.
Make me sound sane.
Why is it indifferent?
Because I'm here.
Yeah, all right, apart from you, I get that you're primed, I get you're ready to go, but apart from you're holding a Quran.
Yeah,
Battle's already lost.
Hey, have you ever heard of hedging your bets?
And that you can
You're like W.C. Fields, you're looking for loopholes. No, but I mean,
If I think they're getting me on this, I'm not
being flippant. Like there was, Billy Graham's ever going to have a spiritual renewal. Bloody Malcolm Muggeridge and all this. Why is it different now? Why is this spiritual renewal more like
okay. Firstly,
can I say something?
Where did it all come from?
Across the world,
You don't know what
every year, 78 million babies are being
Tell me
aborted.
that everything came from
Sure, but that doesn't help him create the spiritual renewal, does it?
let me explain. Firstly, I didn't say, like Billy Graham, all these guys.
For want of a better.
Yeah, I know, but you're right, they say that. But we don't say that. We don't say that, honestly. Because we know reality. Here's what I was saying to my friend here, was that we're going down. Not a renewal, we're going down. And it's going to require a supernatural intervention. Then when he said something to me, I wanted to add to that, clarify. There's going to be a war between us and the Russians, or us and the Russians and the Chinese, or some combination of that. And what's going to happen is, I don't think it'll be nuclear, because I think God wants to preserve Europe.
Well, not to interrupt.
So,
Sorry, but
I finished my thought.
Sorry.
And then I'll let you. And that will lead to a revival, because we'll no longer have the NHS to let people who are engaged in perverted activities off the hook. We'll no longer have contraceptive pills to keep the birth rate down. We'll have traditional families re-established like that.
I would have thought. Russia's somewhat dominated by the Russian Orthodox Church. I would have thought you'd be quite pro-Russian.
I am.
So why do you imagine a conflict with Russia?
Because the British government, which is evil, and not a particular party, they're all evil, they're provoking the Russians.
They're poking the bear.
Yeah, we should say that. But they're actually doing things which we.
I wasn't being flippant.
Yeah. They're basically, and they know why they're doing it. Oh, it's all right to talk to us about, oh, Zelensky and little Ukraine, and it's fighting nobly and all this stuff. They don't believe a word of that. They know exactly what's going on. We're in a great chess game. It's like we were in that late 19th century with Germany and France. We will engage in
Britain, Russia, and Afghanistan.
Yeah,
Shadow game.
The great game. We'll play it and we'll go to war as we did in 1914 in the end because of this game. We'll never pull back. We're doing it now with different stakes. So, But the British and others like the British are particularly antagonistic to the Russians because the Russians don't have those LGBTQ marches. And they say that when those witches, Pussy Riot, desecrated, or sought to desecrate a Russian Orthodox church, they got beaten out and jailed. You know, the police, they took them and they were lashing. They got jail sentences. That's how you treat these people. But they don't like that in our leaders, amongst our leaders, in our society. So you see, and the Russians stand for not corrupting children, but we stand for corrupting children with all this weird ideology. So that's partly why we're on a road of ideological conflict with the Russians. But we're on a road of conflict militarily because also we want to rip Russia apart.
Have you seen how the Russian media make fun of us? Have you seen it?
A little bit.
I don't speak a word of... Do you speak Russian?
I do speak Russian.
So you'll know. The Russian media make jokes about us the way we made jokes about the Irish in the 1970s.
Yeah, in a sense.
It's a sort of comic trope in Russia that I, being British, probably have 7 or 8 genders, and I'm married to him and he has 15 genders. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
We've literally become a laughing stock. And not in a good way. Not in a John Bull way.
Yeah, but in the end, I have to say, I've been to Russia. Yeah? I'm Polish myself.
Right on. And that's a good country he's running over there. I like it.
It's a fine country.
Fine, yeah. Watch yourself. Yes, he is. A great.
And I want to say is, the Russians absolutely love Brits. On the regular basis, just normal people. They've no issues with England or anyone else, even the States for that matter. They've been vilified for a long time, for the last 20, 30 years. They've been cornered and pushed, and they made it to this monstrosity. And the question is, how much of this monstrosity that you got right now in Russia is of the making of the Western nations, and how much of it they contribute to themselves just to finish the picture? So I know Russia from the 90s. And you know all the promises, no NATO expansion. Because I'm from Poland, and I remember all these things. There was so-called Wolfowitz doctrine, which was brought forward not to trust Russia. There was a point when Russia offered to be part of NATO member and NATO alliance. But that Wolfowitz doctrine was no. We're always going to keep them as a bad fellows. We're always going to keep them as an enemy. That caused the chain of the facts that the result we have right now.
I never thought of it, literally until you just said it, that the First World War, the Second World War, and now the Ukraine.
Yeah.
You could also have roughly the same cause. That is Western powers,
Yeah.
going a little too far east. And history repeats and repeats.
It's just you say that because actually, it's an excellent point. I always see that line. There's a line in Europe from actually Poland all the way to Serbia and those regions.
It's roughly where you are.
Yeah. And the moment something happens, the whole breaks loose.
You know, I mean, this is important to me because I'm a total Catholic and I regard Islam as false on so many levels. I stand with the Islamic Republic of Iran against the West and against Israel, which is an element of the West. Because there you have a nation. Above all, Islam for Iran is the ideology which binds the nation and the people and prevents them from being exploited by the Western powers. The Anglo-American power, especially, you know, when I'm a patriot, but my country was in Iran exploiting it, in the Middle East exploiting it, throughout the period of the great period of the empire. It's the way empires work, and I'm not against the empire as such, but it does empires do bad things. So when I say, and for the Islamic Republic of Iran, I want Iran to be a Catholic state.
I know a lot of Catholics who feel the same way. Actually.
While it is not Catholic, while it is totally Islamic, I'm for it because a nation cannot be divesting itself of its ideology and giving itself to the dogs who want to dismember it.
Hold on.
Could Mother Church find some accommodation with the Russian Orthodox Church?
Oh, the Russian Orthodox. Listen, here's how it happened.
I'll take that as a yes.
In 1274,
Yeah.
the Second Council of Lyon all the Easterners, now called Orthodox, they came back to the Catholic Church.
Yeah.
But that fell apart on their part. But they did come back. What they did, it was an ecumenical council. In 1439, all the Easterners, including the Emperor of Byzantium, came back into the Catholic Church. That decision fell apart over there. So basically, they just have to affirm what they regard as valid councils, and we are one again. So yes, we will be one. It's just a matter.
My kids are Orthodox. I have no issues with that.
Yeah. So
I love Orthodox Church. I love it.
We're that close ideologically.
Yeah.
Theologically, you've got a bit of
Yeah.
But you know, so that's a small matter. What matters is, in the meantime, we identify states. You know, the mullahs, I just spent a lot of time slagging off Islam, undermining it historically and ideologically. But those mullahs in Iran, they're not Satan. You can be a Muslim and just ignorant, not by being a monster or being satanic. You just don't know that your religion is false. All those mullahs in Iran, they may or may not know, but they're not the evil ones. The real evil ones are our leaders and the American leaders who are imposing sanctions on them all the time. And the Israelis, of course, quintessentially.
Applying sanctions on Iran?
Yes.
And you're saying that's bad?
Yes. Yes.
Well, the Iranians are very intelligent people.
Yes.
I mean, the cultural heritage is
Why shouldn't they have nuclear
outstanding.
weapons?
It's mind-blowing.
Why shouldn't they have nuclear weapons when Israel has nuclear weapons?
Well, you can't say why should they've got them, so you've got to have them. You've got to have them. You've got to have them.
I know, but it's actually, you know, you see the absurdity of the position we're taking to constantly say they're not allowed to have them when we say, oh well, Israel's
They are
not.
quite unstable, though, aren't they? They're
The
not
Islamic Republic of Iran has been stable since its existence began.
In 1979, but then, yeah.
Tell all the Iranians that came here after the revolution.
Yeah,
It's
uprising
no.
during Obama administration. Obama ignored the student uprising.
I don't know. I'm not saying that there aren't discontent, but they kept them down. So that's what I mean by stability.
Suppressed.
I'm very Machiavellian about stability. Right? I don't think you have to you shed blood to get it, but they get it. But Israel is not especially stable. I mean, it's so small that if it was a successful conventional attack on Israel, its only resort would be to nuclear weapons to save itself, right? So that means that Israel is inherently dangerous for all of us. And when
How's the difference for Iran? I'm not with
I'll
you.
tell you why, because Iran cannot be conquered conventionally.
Why not?
Because it's so big.
No one ever has.
Yeah, no, the Americans would not dare go
Same
in
as
there.
Afghanistan, no one ever
They got
has.
their nose bloodied in Iraq, and that's smaller than Iran. You know, so what I'm seeing is this: that Iran could sustain itself on conventional weapons, but the only country that could really conquer it is if it focused entirely is the United States. The state of Israel, though, must have nuclear weapons to survive conventional.
What about Britain? Would you say the same about Britain?
About not needing nuclear or needing. Oh, we to survive. We've got the sea. So, but what we need is.
Wouldn't be worth much in a modern.
No, in fact, that almost is a failure for us. I can tell you that another time. But with our nuclear boats going around the oceans, we are invulnerable to nuclear attack unless somebody wants to commit suicide. So I'm for keeping Trident.
Apparently they're all out of action at the moment.
Are they all but one? I think
Really?
no. Okay.
That's reassuring.
Yes. Well, certainly every nuclear submarine is out of action at the moment.
But what I think
Fucking Captain Mannering running it over there. What is it?
My view is that if Iran gets nuclear weapons, then Israel will never dare attack Iran. Until Iran gets nuclear weapons, then there's a danger that Israel will use nuclear weapons on one of the Arab states.
So you think that the world will be a safer place once Iran gets nuclear weapons?
Totally, yes. And I've just tried to think this through. Only in this case. Only in this case.
What do you mean only in this case?
Yes, because, for example,
In the case of Iran, as opposed to others.
because in the case of India or Pakistan, it was not safe.
But I think you're not considering one thing. Iran, yes, I could actually agree with you on this one, but the problem with Iran is that they have this already habitual behavior of passing on weapons to less civilized places in the
Russia,
world.
Yes.
like Russia.
And that's the problem. So it's not that the Westerners know very well that they're smart people.
Russia is
But
getting its drones.
the next thing Hamas will get it.
That it's
And
using
then
on
what?
Ukraine from Iran.
And then what? Then Hamas go and Iran's going to say, no, it wasn't us.
If you're applying
I'll explain.
the purest of real
God
politics,
before way.
Hamas is only a problem if you happen to live in Israel.
Yeah. But what I'm
I mean,
saying,
Hamas isn't much of a problem
but
if you live in
Iran is the
Ealing or
supplier
Strait
of
of
any
or
weapons through Egypt to Hamas. So if,
And if
Iran
you're
would
being-
have nuclear weapons, next thing they would try to smuggle a dirty bomb. That's what.
So come on, tell us why it's good that Iran's supplying Russia with drones and missiles.
Yes, I will. And by the way, I wish you'd have won your reform seat. Really do.
So do I.
And
What
maybe
happened?
you have
What?
another
Say
go
that
and you
again.
will next time.
Somewhere else.
What's happening? What's happening? What's happening?
I stood for reform in the
Did
general
you?
election.
Congrats. How'd you get on?
I got,
Sorry.
I got 2,500 votes and kept my
Kept your
deposit.
deposit. Good. I'm terribly sorry.
So I'd say I hope that's successful at some point.